Hey, Cryptizens, and welcome back to another episode of the Crypto Overnighter. And this is another special episode. Now, usually I'm talking to you about the news of the day. This is the second in my discussions series. It's meant to be more of an evergreen episode, with value that's not bound by time and events. Our guest is Zero of Quantum Tech. Now, Quantum Tech is doing a lot of quality work in the NFT space. He also knows a lot about helping people keep themselves safe in Web3 spaces, as well as being an expert on NFTs. So, with no further ado, here is Dark Secrets of Web3 with Zero. Yeah, folks, I'm here with Zero of Quantum Tech, and we are going to be talking about the dark secrets of Web3. It's going to be all of the things that you should know, but maybe you haven't run across yet. First thing I want to talk to you about is Twitter Spaces, because as I understand it, you see 12,000 people in a Twitter space. Are there actually 12,000 people in that Twitter space, Zero?
It really depends. In some cases, maybe. In some cases, not necessarily. There's a lot of different things that go into it, but it's pretty easy to buy traffic for those spaces. It's also pretty easy to tell when traffic's been bought too.
So how would somebody know?
The very easy tell, the easiest way to get Spaces listenership up is just by loading a bunch of browsers that listen to the space. That's really generalizing things, but that's about what goes into it. You'll see a lot of people in the other listeners category if people are doing it in a cheap manner. So you'll see maybe 20, 30 people in the top part and then 1,000 plus in the other listeners. Pretty good tell that there's some botted traffic. In the cumulative listens, though, there's it gets even more interesting because of the way the bots behave and just the way the program, the libraries that you need work. They are registered as a lot more independent users than it seems, so they get cycled a lot. So whereas you might look like you have a running total of about 500, at the end of the show, the cumulative total will look like 50,000. So that's where it gets pretty easy when you see people with just egregious, massive numbers. Like you could snoop pretty easily and figure they're botting in some ways, but botting's meant to be a means to an end. Like if you're doing that consistently, you're not really doing yourself any favors aside from just having big numbers. So a lot of people, if you're smart about it, will have done it in the beginning to snowball some things, and you supplement that with actual interesting content, and you don't need to do it anymore.
Okay. So what are some tips that people can use to avoid even wasting their time in those spaces?
Just, I wouldn't actively try to seek out spaces that have bots that kind of avoid them, because that's not necessarily a quality indicator, is it?
Not necessarily, no.
I can see somebody who might have really good quality stuff that's just struggling to get through the algorithm that might want a little boost. I'm not really advocating for it because it can have adverse effects on your account. But if you want to avoid it, like, it's just avoid bigger spaces. I think they could, and it's not even always the host that's doing these things. I've seen a lot of occasions where people will use bots as a means to like inflate the numbers of a space and then report it for botting. And so you don't know what's going for. I wouldn't blame the host in many situations at all, unless I've seen it happen consistently. Like I've intentionally botted a space to see what happens. I've been forthcoming about that too.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So look for the quality product and not necessarily look at how they got their space filled, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's the internet. Numbers don't matter. Like, as long as numbers have been on the internet, there's been people that have done what they can to make it easy to game those numbers. So if you're smart, you're not really paying attention to them. It's like Yelp reviews or Google reviews or Amazon reviews. Are you really going to trust a product that has like a bath mat that has 70,000 Amazon reviews? You're going to realize that somebody probably botted that a little bit too heavy because people aren't that enthusiastic about bath mats.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up because of the recent change in Twitter. Now that you can see how many views something has, as opposed to just seeing how many likes that it's had, that's an interesting change in metrics, I think.
Absolutely. I think it's super interesting. It gives you another number to base. You get a nice percentage off of that, so you can see what percentage of your audience is interacting with things. For me, it's been really helpful if the number is accurate. And if I'm not as much concerned if the number is accurate, I just want to make sure it's consistent. As far as what I could tell, it's consistent, and
Right.
it's good number. Like it's a good number to have on there. You can get the percentage of interactions, and if you baseline yourself, you can have a pretty good quality indicator rather than just going off of like how many likes did a post get because it might not have got seen by that many people.
So one of the, I guess I didn't tell the audience, you've actually been on this show before, and the topic that you were on last time was NFTs. And that was actually part of the reason I wanted to bring you back because you have such a deep knowledge of NFTs. I was hoping I could convince you to tell me stuff about NFTs that nobody knows.
Um, Yeah, there's so much I could probably tell you that not many people know just because of how much stuff that we work on with it. It's really what areas are you interested in? Like tech wise, I think that there's a lot of cool stuff. I think a lot of people confuse an NFT with an image. It's normally not unless it's on chain. And on chain stuff is a little bit different. More it's typically pointing to an image. You own a number in a series of numbers or a bunch of numbers in a series of numbers. I think that's interesting to point out. There's a lot of stuff interesting to know about NFTs. I think what's more interesting, and I think what people should really strive to learn is just the elements of self-sovereignty, meaning like owning your own assets and crypto and stuff like that, how to be protected doing it. I think there's so many new and novel things that walking around with your mouth agape, just like, oh, this is cool. It's going to get your wallet taken. So
Hmm.
I think what you should obsess over and what you should be super curious about is just safety and just practicing just good practice with like keeping either your assets in your sole custody or just in things like that. I think that's what a lot of people don't know that I think that they should know to better answer that question.
That's a really good topic. Thank you for bringing that up. Do you advocate for a hardware wallet or software wallet?
I advocate for both. See, I have both, and neither of mine have any assets on them. And what I do is both a hardware wallet and a software wallet, so MetaMask. Um, I said MetaMask, so a bunch of bots will comment on this. It's going to be cool. Or a hardware wallet and a MetaMask control a Gnosis multi-sig, a multi-signature wallet. And that way, my multi-signature wallet, it's not an EOA address. It doesn't have a private key or a seed phrase. It's a smart contract. So I've already eliminated the two biggest attack vectors, which is going after those. So nobody can kind of assume control of my wallet. One of the things that scares me about EOA wallets or wallets that you control that are in your custody, that you have private keys to and all that, is the fact that you have those. Like people aren't used to the fact, like people are so conditioned that I can just change my password. It's all good. But if if your seed phrase is done, that's not your wallet anymore. That's yours and whoever has your seed phrase's wallet forever. There's nothing that you could do to revoke that. And that's the scariest part. So for me, I cut off that. I have a pretty complex multi-signature setup that also puts me in check. I don't just aimlessly spend shit all the time. I'm a lot safer with things. It just puts my mind in a good spot when I'm interacting with my assets. I don't even have anything great or of any huge value. It's just a lot of stuff that means a lot to me. And no matter what value it is, it's still a gut check when somebody gets it off of you, which I'd like to eliminate the possibility of. But yeah, just I wouldn't advocate for either. I wouldn't because if you're putting a bunch of money or a bunch of assets that are worth money on a hardware wallet, every penny more that you put on that, you increase the risk of physical harm of somebody coming to get that. And if it's just a single point of failure where somebody just needs to get to you and unlock that code, that's a scary situation. If it's just on a MetaMask, that's an even scarier situation because it's connected to a browser. Like I'm not I, like that's weird. I don't even like having my credit card in Chrome, let alone my whole wallet with all that shit. So I stay away from that, try to get away from that. And that's a huge attack vector. So yeah, I try to stay with the physical and the digital attack realms with that setup. And I know I could still get strong armed to some degree. It would just be very difficult, and I think that it would be pretty evident if somebody came at me physically that it's an uphill battle to try to get to those assets. So I don't know, long way around saying like don't trust either. A hardware wallet will give you a false sense of security. It can be compromised in very much the same way. It has a seed phrase. Each of those accounts have a private key. They can be taken, and that hardware wallet doesn't mean shit. So I think I said shit 3 times in there, and I apologize. I apologize if I'm not allowed to do that.
The podcast is PG rated, even though I am not.
Okay, so I won't say that again.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Can we
You're
beep
fine.
it? I got a little
You're
beep
fine.
thing. Hold on, where is it? Where's my beeper?
Um,
There we go.
Speaking of being in shit, we've seen a lot of hacks, NFTs being stolen from people lately, and I think you've touched on some of the reasons for that. I know that a lot of times people have found themselves vulnerable because they followed links and advice in Discord rooms that were really bad. Do you have any tips for people how they may like avoid that kind of scenario?
I don't know anyone who's actually had their assets hacked. The hacking is like somebody. Well, I think it's been done. I think there's been hacks that have been done, but 99%, and that's a false statistic. I don't know what the real number is, but most of the people that you see were phished. They were sent a link that looked like it was something it wasn't. They clicked it. Greed took over, and they thought that they were going to get in on something, a too good to be true or something, or they were sent an email that was deceptive that looked like it was from somewhere else. Those are all phishing. Those aren't hacks. Those involve the social engineering of the victim. Like you've got to get somebody to the point where they're willing to essentially hand over their assets to you. It's a completely different story. And I think most of the people that you see that say they've been hacked or were phished, and they both are unfortunate. It just doesn't. Saying you were hacked sounds like somebody went out of their way and you weren't being irresponsible with your assets. I think that it's an easier way to say I was hacked. I would want to say I was hacked if I was phished, but you weren't. You were phished, or you were social engineered or something like that. So I think that's an important bit of semantics to get out of the way. Just kind of it makes people like saying telling people that somebody got hacked lets people think that like, okay, my personal wallet security is fine. This is because somebody went after somebody else. And no, it wasn't. It was because somebody was using probably a similar setup to yours, did something that you probably would have done, and were just more susceptible because they were higher visibility. I've been on his show a few times, Crypto Novo. I've talked to him a few times. He just got hacked. He had 4 punks taken. I have a bunch of notes on this. He had 4 punks taken. Hold on, let me bring out my notes because I was talking about this morning. 3 of which have sold as of this morning. 1 for 75 ETH, 1 for 199 ETH, 1 for 80 ETH. He had a Bored Ape, a Mutant, 2 Meebits, 2 clones, and 9.5 ETH just taken in a matter of seconds because he clicked but what people think is an Art Blocks link that wasn't Art Blocks, was fake. And if you know Novo, that's his whole identity. Like that's him. Like he is that punk. I've never met or seen somebody that embodies their digital avatar more than this dude. And more so, like he runs a business that is like about making people, it's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad, man. Like, and it's nothing but sad, but at the end of the day, it was a mistake that he made. It wasn't somebody going after him, aggressively. You know what I mean? Someone was casting a broad net and he caught himself in it.
Yeah. And you have to think that a lot of these things that we've done for our own convenience and to make things easier, like using wallets as opposed to having to enter your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, whatever, these things are what are causing our problems.
For sure. I think that and also like we're likening the like verify with wallet to like the signing with Google. It's like the same thing. Like people are using the same UX patterns when they're designing this stuff, and we're guilty of it because that's what people expect. But we've conditioned people to just use their wallets like a Google account. So That's on the builders in the spaces and the product designers and the UX designers that like think better. There's a lot of really good security protocols like kind of being established right now that help people delegate interest of their wallets to another wallet that doesn't have access to that. But there's a lot of buy-in that's necessary with that, and a lot of education. It just it either has to happen to you or has to happen to someone close to you to get really serious. And it's unfortunate. It's just how people are. Like they just couldn't be me until it is me. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep, for sure. And thinking about that and thinking about like what's going on with SBF and thinking about, misrepresentation of the amount of followers a person have. We started off the show with dark secrets of Web3, but I've been around for a long time, and these are all things that came up in Web 2. Less so in Web 1 because there wasn't as much interaction, but certainly a lot of these crimes and problems have been around for a very long time.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is a toolkit that people are pulling from that's well weathered and battle tested. These are all like phishing scams, email scams, and things like that. There's no new tools being used. They're just new faces on it. It's just easier. It's easier, and the payout's a lot bigger. Typically, when you're running like Web 2 scams and stuff like that, there's a long lead time between the point of contact that you have where you've like successfully kind of got somebody with bait to the point where you've extracted money, unless like you've got a really effective scam. With Web3, it's like, hey, go to this site with a mint button.
Yeah, they come to you.
That's it. Like, and that's $1 million in assets gone. Like, that's it. Like, and I hate to laugh at that, but that's how easy we've made it here. That's someone said like 600,000. It's a lot more than 600. This is like $1 million in assets he lost. It's Novo. That's a lot of money. Like, I don't care who you are. That's multiple houses worth of money just gone. What other opportunities out there for a criminal do you have to take multiple houses of money off of somebody and just go off into the night? Because they'll never be caught.
Which leads to the question, are we ready to handle our own security? Or are things like NFT adoption and crypto adoption being held back because of our relatively primitive security methods?
See, that's where like I think there's a balance that needs to be had. I think as a humans are a little bit too impulsive, and that like the internet and scroll culture has just taught us to just go on to the next thing and just assume face value what we saw at first. I don't think we're ready for that. I don't think we're built for that. I think that we need a lot of people on the front ends building different design patterns that are going to help people. I think that there's ways to have self-sovereignty while taking out things like the necessity of having the seed phrase is something you remember, to bringing it back to something like passwords or biometrics or something like that. I think that those are not necessarily more secure, but they're changeable. And that's what's important. I think there's custodial contracts, smart contracts that you'll be able to use, hopefully in the future, don't really involve many, if any, middlemen that will allow you to do things like this. You just involve a front end assigning system, and you'll be able to change passwords without really compromising a wallet. I think that's where we need to head, because there's a select few that really get it. Even the ones that you're like, oh man, this person must really get it, they're the ones that are getting hacked and are not hacked. I did it.
Yeah,
Fish.
sure. That Bitcoin core dev, I forgot his name, but he was a hardcore self-sovereignty, do-it-yourself kind of guy. And then he just got burned for like $1 million or some amount of Bitcoin stolen from him.
It hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts bad. Like any amount of money is like taken from you is horrible. And on a blockchain, it's even worse, because like if like look at Novo, like I hate to keep going back to him, but he's the most recent one, and it's a really good example. He's going to see that punk forever. That's the point of the blockchain. That's going to be there forever, and that sucks.
Yeah, that's horrible. And just to lose your whole business and identity like that in seconds for a single lapse in judgment is just painful.
For ignorance, like there's the dev team, they did Aku something. that locked $34 million in a smart contract because of a small error. It was like during the bull run. They tried to incorporate a refund function into their smart contract. That didn't work. They had a number that went crazy that they required to sync up to some things, and it just will never, ever give them a situation, regardless of what could be done, to get those millions of dollars out of that contract. That hurts so much more than getting something stolen, in my opinion, because your stupidity is going to look at you in the face every time you go look at that contract on either scan. It's just sitting in there forever. It will live there longer than you will, than your kids will, your grandkids will. It will just sit there in that contract forever.
Everybody in that space will always know what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's harsh. That's harsh to run from. That's harder than social media to get away from.
Yeah, you can't delete that account.
No, you cannot. So, which side do you come down on for NFTs? Are you coming down on the art side or the utility side?
Always utility. I think even art with utility is better. There's a lot of folks that think that like coming into NFTs means they need to make the most innovative art, and that's not the case. Like our art can innovate in its own vacuum. The technology and utility behind NFTs, like the fact that like it's a tokenized form of ownership that's provable, immutable, and awesome. Like that's where the tech is, and developing utility around that is really where things start getting interesting. I'm not saying there isn't value in developing art, but there's nothing that making art better or different genres or anything like that is really doing to accelerate NFTs, aside from accelerate just the adoption of collection. The technology behind it, the utility behind it, things doing things is really where we start to see the value in what's going on. Because otherwise, like there's you're not really making a strong case of why you can't just sell art on a Web2 platform, aside from just the permanence of it being there. But we can establish that with something like IPFS coupled with just the Stripe payment gateway. So I don't know. Big ramble there. I think I'm on utility side always, but I'm a nerd building utility with a bunch of other nerds who are building utility. So it's kind of where I have to stand.
So you did a little bit of prognostication, it sounded like, in there. What do you see, coming for utility as far as NFTs in the near future?
I think that prognostication is a word that I'm going to try to incorporate into a conversation in the future. First of all, by context clues, I understand what it means. But I think in the future, like I think where we're going towards, it's just a bunch of different use cases and a bunch of different things that NFTs can do. I think that when we first started getting digital and onto computers, people like would obsess over formats, like, oh, did JPEGs and MP3s and things like that. They were like, you would think that today, like people would be really super interested in MP3 technology. If you grew up at the same time I did, but most kids these days don't even know what that is. They're just streaming things. Yeah. I think that that's where we're going. I think a lot of the guts go to the back. I think the nerds get to like take care of that and build a bit better UX around it. And I think that what ends up happening is you just have a bunch of different classes. You have things like ENS that are digital identities, provable, immutable digital identities. You have so many different things. Like gaming is obviously what everyone thinks is going to be the big thing. But there's business use cases. Like our business, for instance, we run off of NFT, smart contracts, and Web3, and very, very little SaaS or like common products and things like that. Like it's most of the stuff that we do as a business is on a blockchain. And that's the future. Like we're using it. Like we're not flipping it. We're not selling it. We're making money and existing in a space because we're using the technology. And I think that's where we're headed.
Can you give me a preview? Anything coming out you can tell me about?
Always. We have the release of 3Gate. Depending on when this comes out is when we'll have that out. And that's a big, it's already out now. You can go to 3gate.io and you can gate a link to a smart contract, to a ETH address or something like that. We have expanded that platform in a lot of ways, a lot of different validation sources. You can gate a link to a Twitter list, a Twitter person, a Discord role, with QR codes and things like that. You can There's a attached component called badges, which is really cool. It's just a way to incentivize participation, people showing up to things. We have a bunch of integrations to make that easy. It's deployed onto 6 chains right now, so it's, as far as we know, the first like true multi-chain project like this where we're able to mint these digital trinkets onto all these different chains, and the supply is synced across. It's super cool. Like it's just super duper cool.
I've
3gate.io. Go ahead.
I've got a couple of those
You
badges.
got some badges.
What I don't know is what's the effective difference between that and a pope?
So you say Pope. Interesting. Like everybody says that different. And
Oh,
it's
I
like
was
one of
thinking soap pope.
Pope. I hear Poap, Pope. I hear so many different pronunciations of that, and that's kind of fascinating to me. But either way, there's a lot of difference there. I think that POAPs or popes are they serve their purpose. We're meant to be very integratable. We're meant to be very open. Whereas there's still an approval process with POAPs. There's still a problems with just the single way to really interface, because I think they're just like code based. I've honestly never claimed one, but I've heard a lot of complaints, and we've tried to build some solutions with them, but there's a lot of things that kind of stop that. A lot of bottlenecks in that process of the approval process that they put you through, the hoops that you have users jump through to jump to a different network. I know you can mint them on ETH, but there's a lot of UX that could be refined around that. So what we did is we integrated badges into the 3gate platform. It's not necessarily the standout feature of it. It's just a standout feature of it. And I think that's a big delineating factor. Whereas POAP is a stand on its own product. Badges is really empowered and emboldened by 3gate, the technology behind it. Being able to tier badge ownership, for instance. We've been doing a test group with the DGen Friends Daily Twitter space, and every day people will claim their badges. Very soon, we're going to roll out something where if you have 10 of their badges, you're able to claim another badge. So you'll be able to get like a silver star, then a gold star, etc. And it's just cool. Like it's a cool way to onboard people, because you have 6 chains. We have Polygon, Optimism, Avalanche, Binance Smart Chain, Ethereum mainnet. That's 5, and there's one more. You'll have to check it out and tell me later what I missed out. But it's cool, man. Like it's meant to be like people feel the way I put it is very few people's first NFTs are going to be POAPs because of just the barrier to entry. It's clunky. It's difficult. You got to go get a wallet and all this stuff. We want to take all those barriers to entry out. We'll have Web2 claiming with badges, so you'll be able to claim them to your 3gate profile without having to mint them, and it diminishes from the same supply. Big ramble again. Badges are great. Like that's our heart and soul. And in the beginning, when we talked about we're only working on internal stuff, that's internal stuff.
Yeah, and I can totally see people wanting to collect them. They're going to be like digital crack, I think.
Digital, we want to put these in a class called digital trinkets. I think digital collectibles is a thing of its own. I think digital trinkets represent just trinkets can be valuable. Trinkets can be hugely valuable, but I think these are meant to. Does it make sense? Like, do I need to elaborate on that? Because I think it makes sense. Like, just as not less valuable, just smaller.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, they bought the Isle of Manhattan for a bunch of trinkets, so.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking time out and talking to us today, giving us some insight into what those dark secrets of Web3 space are. And anything else you'd like to say to the folks before we take off?
No, just keep doing it, man. You specifically keep creating content. I think this is the year that kind of gets reeled in. You're so on the mark with the evergreen content and just having something when the crowds get here. I think that this is crucial. And just tune into content like this. If you've made it this far, obviously subscribe wherever you can subscribe, but seek out information like this. Information that's not necessarily trying to tap into the hype. More so just get out good info. So good on you for this. And like, I appreciate it. Anytime I can make time available without be a pain in your butt, I will be by here anytime you have me.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day. And that's going to do it for us for the Dark Secrets of Web3 episode. I want to thank Zero of Quantum Tech for coming by, and I want to thank you, my listeners, because when you stop listening, I will stop talking. We'll see you next time.